Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just arrange myself a little bit here. Okay, thank you so much, Mayor, for that introduction. It is the perfect segue into what I want to share with the audience today. So to all you graduates, first thing I want to say is congratulations. Today you are celebrating commencement, which means that you are starting out. You are getting ready to blaze a new trail as artists in whatever way you create art. And in making your first steps along that trail, I encourage you to view yourselves and your work as sources of power. Power to uplift, power to enlighten, and power to bring about concrete, positive change in the world. There are 4 ways in which you can exercise that power. You can use your art as a tool for healing. You can use it as a means of bridging cultural gaps. You can use it as a catalyst for social change. And you can use it as a unifying force in the face of negative, preconceived notions and emotions. I'm going to illustrate these possibilities today by examining the life and art of Buford Delaney. The French would say Beaufort, but Buford's family would call him, as I called him, Buford. As I talk about him today, he did prefer being called by his first name, so that's the way that I will refer to him. I encourage you to look at the images on the screen. At your far left, you can see Buford at the age of 52. This photograph was taken a couple of weeks before he set sail on the SS Liberté from New York to come to France. And he spent the last 26 years of his life here. The second picture that you see of him in the center was taken at the age of 73, when he was seen walking about a block from his studio in the Plaisance district of the 14th arrondissement. He was seen by a young African-American photographer who recognized him, understood who he was, respected him, and just happened to have his camera and asked permission to take this photo portrait. The third image that you see of Buford was taken when he was in his late 70s, and he was an inpatient at St. Anne's Psychiatric Hospital in the 14th arrondissement. He died in that institution. There are also 2 pieces of art on the screen. One is a self-portrait that he did in 1944, one of many, many, many self-portraits. This particular painting is owned by the Art Institute of Chicago in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. And then the other piece of art that you see is probably the first completely abstract expressionist painting that Buford Delaney created. He painted that in 1954, between 1954 and 1956. And this is currently owned by the Museum of Modern Art, otherwise known as MoMA, in Manhattan, New York. So I'm going to evoke Buford in all the 4 ways that I have mentioned that you can exercise your artistic practice as power. The first way is using your creative practice as a tool for healing. As Provost Mayer said, Buford was an African-American painter battling mental illness in 1950s Paris. He actually battled mental illness for much longer than that. His mental illness began when he was quite young. He was born in Knoxville, Tennessee in 1901. He was one of 10 children conceived by a Methodist Episcopal preacher father and a formerly enslaved domestic mother. Of this couple's 10 offspring, Buford and 3 of his siblings were the only ones who survived childhood. He was poor, he was Black, and he was gay. And he grew up in an environment that oppressed him for all of these things. He heard voices from a young age, and those voices grew louder and more critical of him as he got older. The voices criticized him for the same reasons that external society oppressed him. and they became a source of torment for him. And Buford painted to quiet those voices, and he eventually used the voices to fuel his work. He used his art as a source of healing. We all in this audience experience some form of mental or emotional disturbance at some level in our lives. We could experience sadness. We could experience anxiety. We all experience stress. We could experience depression. We can experience grief. There's going to be a moment in our lives when we are going to grieve someone or something that we have lost. In these moments, I am encouraging you to embrace Buford's example and engage in your art, engage in your creative practice, whatever it may be, and use that action as a means of healing yourself. I also encourage you to invite others in your circle who may be experiencing such discomfort to tap into their creativity as a source of healing. They may not even recognize that they have this ability. It's something that you can help them to do. You can walk by them in that process. The second way that I mentioned, using your art to bridge cultural gaps. I want to ask you a question. When you think about the spoken word, and I'm not talking about spoken word in terms of hip hop culture, I'm talking about speaking, talking to people. Do you think about culture? Most people do not. And yet, the spoken word is not